Imagine a vast field just before sunrise. The air is still. The earth is cold. Nothing moves, yet everything is alive with anticipation. You stand there alone, carrying years of unanswered longing, of effort that did not return what you hoped for, of silent questions that followed you into sleep. You have tried to move closer to life by reaching, by waiting, by holding on tighter. And yet, the more you strained toward what you wanted, the further it seemed to drift away. This is not failure. This is initiation. Carl Jung understood that when the psyche is driven by lack, it cannot rest, and what cannot rest cannot receive. The soul does not awaken through force. It awakens through alignment. The night you are in is not punishment, but preparation. You are being led away from pursuit and toward presence, toward the place where striving ends and truth begins to speak. Stay here. The dawn does not rush, neither must you. Chapter 1. Chasing reveals the hidden wound. When you chase, something within you believes it is incomplete. Jung would call this the ego acting from separation rather than from the self. The longing feels urgent because it is fueled by fear. Fear of absence, fear of being unseen, fear of not being enough. Like a hand clenched too tightly around sand, the more you grasp, the more escapes. The counterintuitive truth is this: what you pursue from fear confirms the very lack you wish to escape. Chapter 2. The ego seeks control, the soul seeks ground. Control appears as intelligence, as strategy, as restraint. Yet it is often the armor of an anxious ego. Jung warned that when the ego dominates, life becomes something to manage rather than inhabit. Nature offers another way. A mountain does not adjust itself to the weather. It stands. When you stop controlling outcomes and begin to trust your inner ground, your energy shifts from tension to steadiness. The truth you resist is this: surrender is not weakness, but maturity. Chapter 3. The shadow drives the pursuit. What you have not integrated moves you. Jung named this force the shadow. When fear, abandonment, or unworthiness are buried, they do not vanish. They act through urgency and attachment. A person who cannot tolerate uncertainty will mistake anxiety for love. The counterintuitive truth is this: facing your darkness does not diminish you. It releases the energy trapped inside it. Chapter 4. Projection creates illusions. You often chase not reality, but an image shaped by your unconscious. Jung described projection as the psyche, placing its unseen contents onto the world. You believe something outside will complete you because you have not reclaimed it within. Like mistaking a reflection for another shore, you move toward what cannot hold you. The truth you may avoid is this: what you seek is asking to be lived, not found. Chapter 5. Presence. Ends the inner war. Presence is the state where the nervous system softens and the soul re-enters the body. Jung saw this as the beginning of individuation, when ego and self align. When you are present, you no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer react to silence as threat. The counterintuitive truth is this: stillness is the most magnetic form of power. Chapter 6. The return to the self. Individuation is not becoming someone new. It is returning to the center you abandoned to survive. The dawn arrives quietly. You notice the chase has ended, not because you gave up, but because you no longer need to run. Jung believed the self is both the center and the totality of the psyche. When you live from that center, life responds differently. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are whole. and wholeness calls everything that truly belongs. When you chase, something within you believes it is incomplete. Jung would call this the ego acting from separation rather than from the self. The longing feels urgent because it is fueled by fear. Fear of absence, fear of being unseen, fear of not being enough. Like a hand clenched too tightly around sand, the more you grasp, the more escapes. The counterintuitive truth is this: what you pursue from fear confirms the very lack you wish to escape. This is difficult to accept because the mind has been trained to equate effort with worth. You were taught that wanting more proves seriousness, that holding on tightly demonstrates care, that persistence will eventually be rewarded. But the psyche does not respond to effort alone. It responds to the inner position from which that effort arises. When desire is born from wholeness, it flows calmly. When it is born from fear, it tightens, accelerates, and distorts perception. What you call passion is often anxiety wearing a refined mask. Jung understood that the ego, when disconnected from the self, becomes a restless seeker. It scans the world for reassurance, for confirmation, for something or someone that will finally quiet the unease within. This is not because you are weak. It is because at some point, you learned that safety depended on something outside of you. Perhaps attention was inconsistent. Perhaps love arrived conditionally. Perhaps silence once meant loss. The psyche remembers, and from that memory, it chases. Observe how chasing feels in the body. There is tension in the chest, a tightening in the stomach, a subtle inability to rest. Even when you appear calm, something inside is leaning forward, waiting, anticipating. Jung would say this is the activation of an unconscious complex. The present moment is no longer the present moment. It is a stage upon which the past reenacts itself, disguised as hope. A person once believed that if she could just be more patient, more understanding, more available, love would finally stay. She called it devotion. In truth, it was fear of abandonment speaking through her actions. Each message sent too quickly, each silence endured without honesty, each boundary softened out of anxiety fed the same wound. The world responded accordingly, not as punishment, but as reflection. The psyche was asking to be seen. Chasing is not a moral failure. It is a diagnostic signal. It reveals where you do not yet trust yourself to remain intact without external confirmation. It reveals where the ego still believes survival depends on outcome. Jung taught that until the unconscious is made conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What feels like bad luck or repeated disappointment is often the same wound, asking, again and again, for recognition. The moment you notice yourself chasing is the moment the work begins. Not by stopping desire, but by questioning its origin. Ask yourself quietly, what am I afraid will happen if I stop reaching? What do I believe I will lose? Beneath the answer lies the hidden wound. And within that wound lies energy that has been bound by fear. The paradox is this: when you stop chasing, you do not become empty. You become present. And presence is the condition under which the self can return. You do not lose what is meant for you by standing still. You lose only what required you to abandon yourself in order to keep it. Chasing reveals the wound not to shame you, but to guide you. The psyche is precise. It does not expose pain without also offering the possibility of integration. When you allow yourself to feel the fear beneath the pursuit without acting on it, something shifts. The hand loosens. The breath deepens. The ego pauses long enough for the self to speak. And when the self begins to lead, the chase naturally ends, not because desire has died, but because it no longer comes from lack. Control appears as intelligence, as strategy, as restraint. Yet it is often the armor of an anxious ego. Jung warned that when the ego dominates, life becomes something to manage rather than inhabit. Nature offers another way. A mountain does not adjust itself to the weather, it stands. When you stop controlling outcomes and begin to trust your inner ground, your energy shifts from tension to steadiness. The truth you resist is this: surrender is not weakness, but maturity. The ego seeks control because it fears collapse. It believes that if it does not anticipate every outcome, regulate every emotion, and adjust every behavior, something essential will be lost. Control promises safety, but delivers exhaustion. You may call it being careful, thoughtful, or disciplined, yet beneath it lies a deeper motive: the inability to tolerate uncertainty. Jung understood this as the ego's refusal to trust the deeper ordering principle of the psyche, the self. When control governs your inner life, you are never fully present. Part of you is always scanning ahead, rehearsing scenarios, calculating risks. Even moments of calm are provisional, fragile, dependent on conditions remaining stable. This is not peace. It is vigilance. The nervous system does not rest in control. It braces. And what braces cannot receive. The soul seeks something different. It seeks ground. Ground is not certainty. Ground is inner stability that does not require prediction. It is the felt sense that you can remain intact even when outcomes are unclear. Jung described this as the ego learning to orient itself around the self rather than attempting to replace it. When this shift begins, life is no longer a problem to solve, but a reality to participate in. Consider how control manifests subtly. You monitor others' reactions. You adjust your words to avoid discomfort. You intervene prematurely, not because action is required, but because waiting feels unbearable. The impulse to act is often mistaken for strength. In truth, it is frequently the inability to sit with vulnerability. The ego would rather do something imperfect than feel uncertainty fully. A person once believed that staying ahead of disappointment meant staying in control. She planned conversations before they happened. She softened her needs before expressing them. She anticipated withdrawal and preemptively reduced her presence. From the outside, she appeared composed. Inside, she was constantly tense. Only when she allowed herself to stop managing impressions did her body begin to settle. Ground returned when control loosened. Surrender, as Jung understood it, is not passivity. It is not giving up discernment or responsibility. It is the decision to stop forcing life to conform to fear-based expectations. It is the willingness to experience uncertainty without immediately anesthetizing it through action. This requires strength of a different order, not the strength to dominate, but the strength to remain open. Nature illustrates this without instruction. A tree does not calculate the storm. It roots. The deeper the roots, the less need for adjustment. When your sense of self is grounded internally, you do not need to control relationships, outcomes, or perceptions. You respond when response is needed. You wait when waiting is true. Action arises from clarity, not compulsion. The ego resists this because surrender feels like exposure. It fears that without control, you will be overwhelmed, rejected, or erased. Yet the opposite is true. When control softens, your presence strengthens. Your energy becomes less sharp, less urgent, more coherent. Others feel this not as withdrawal, but as stability. Jung believed that psychological maturity involves accepting the limits of conscious will. The ego must learn that it is not the master of the psyche, but its servant. When this hierarchy is restored, the inner conflict eases. You no longer fight life to feel safe within it. Surrender does not mean nothing matters. It means you trust what matters to emerge without coercion. It means you allow life to meet you rather than chasing it into submission. And in that allowing, the soul finds ground. What you have not integrated moves you. Jung named this force the shadow. When fear, abandonment, or unworthiness are buried, they do not vanish. They act through urgency and attachment. A person who cannot tolerate uncertainty will mistake anxiety for love. The counterintuitive truth is this: facing your darkness does not diminish you. It releases the energy trapped inside it. The shadow forms where parts of you were judged unsafe to express. Long before conscious choice, you learned what was acceptable and what was not. Certain emotions were welcomed. Others were met with silence, disapproval, or withdrawal. To survive, you adapted. You pushed parts of yourself into the unconscious, not because they were wrong, but because they threatened belonging. Jung understood this as a necessary early strategy that becomes destructive when left unexamined in adulthood. What is pushed away does not rest quietly. It seeks expression. When the shadow remains unconscious, it expresses itself indirectly through behavior rather than awareness. It does not speak in clear language. It speaks through compulsion, through urgency, through the feeling that something must happen now. This is why pursuit feels irresistible. You believe you are choosing, but you are being propelled by what you refuse to feel. The shadow often carries the original wound, the fear of being left, the terror of being unseen, the belief that rest will lead to loss. These are not ideas you consciously endorse. They are emotional truths formed before reason could intervene. Jung called these emotional nuclei complexes. Once activated, they temporarily take control of the psyche. You feel compelled to act, to attach, to secure. Reason follows afterward, trying to justify what fear has already decided. Notice how the shadow disguises itself. It presents urgency as passion, control as care, attachment as loyalty, anxiety as depth. This is why patterns repeat even when you understand them intellectually. Insight alone does not disarm the shadow. Only integration does. And integration begins when you stop obeying the impulse long enough to observe it. A woman once believed she loved deeply because she felt intensely. She attached quickly, feared distance, and experienced overwhelming relief when reassurance arrived. She told herself this was closeness. Only later did she see that her intensity rose precisely where uncertainty appeared. It was not love that was activated. It was an old fear that silence meant abandonment. Her pursuit was not directed toward another person. It was directed away from a feeling she could not yet tolerate. Jung taught that the shadow is not your enemy. It is a carrier of life energy. Everything you rejected still belongs to you. The danger lies not in the darkness itself, but in remaining unconscious of it. When the shadow rules from below, you feel driven. When it is brought into awareness, its energy becomes available rather than compulsive. Facing the shadow does not mean acting it out. It means feeling it without obedience. When the urge to pursue arises, the work is not to suppress it, nor to justify it, but to stay present with the sensation underneath. the tightness, the heat, the fear, the story it tells you. Jung would say this is how consciousness expands, by holding what was once split off. As the shadow is integrated, urgency loses its grip. You begin to distinguish between desire and fear, between attraction and anxiety, between movement that arises from fullness and movement that arises from lack. The psyche no longer needs to shout through compulsion when it knows it will be listened to. The counterintuitive truth remains. Your darkness does not weaken you. It contains the vitality you have been missing. When you stop running from it, you stop being driven by it. And when the shadow is no longer in control, pursuit transforms into choice. You often chase not reality, but an image shaped by your unconscious. Jung described projection as the psyche, placing its unseen contents onto the world. You believe something outside will complete you because you have not reclaimed it within. Like mistaking a reflection for another shore, you move toward what cannot hold you. The truth you may avoid is this: what you seek is asking to be lived, not found. Projection is one of the psyche's most subtle defenses. It protects you from the discomfort of turning inward by convincing you that the answer exists elsewhere. Instead of facing an unlived part of yourself, you encounter it as a person, a promise, a future, or a role. The image feels charged, meaningful, irresistible. You call this attraction. In truth, it is recognition without ownership. Jung observed that projection is not a mistake of perception, but a necessity of development. The psyche externalizes what it cannot yet contain. You project strength when you have not yet claimed your own authority. You project safety when you have not yet learned to ground yourself. You project love when you have not yet made contact with your own capacity to remain present with your inner life. The world becomes a screen onto which the unconscious displays what is waiting to be integrated. This is why projected objects feel larger than life. They appear luminous, decisive, whole. You attribute to them qualities that feel missing in you: certainty, calm, direction, meaning. When you are near them, you feel temporarily expanded. When they withdraw, you collapse. This volatility is not love. It is the psyche oscillating between contact and loss of an inner resource it does not yet know how to hold. A person once believed she had found her destiny in another. He seemed grounded where she felt unstable, confident where she felt uncertain, alive where she felt muted. Over time, the intensity exhausted her. She felt increasingly small, dependent, anxious. Only later did she realize she had handed over her own unlived strength. What she admired was not something he gave her. It was something in her that had never been developed. Jung warned that projection binds you to illusions until you withdraw it consciously. As long as the projected image remains outside, you remain dependent on it. You chase not because the object is essential, but because it carries something you have disowned. The psyche insists on recovery. If you do not reclaim what is projected, you will pursue it again and again in different forms. Projection also distorts perception. You do not see the other as they are, but as a container for your unconscious content. Their silence becomes meaning. Their attention becomes salvation. Their withdrawal becomes catastrophe. Reality bends under the weight of fantasy. When the illusion breaks, you feel betrayed, not because the other deceived you, but because the psyche lost its mirror. The work is not to suppress attraction or deny desire. It is to ask a different question. Instead of asking, "Why do I want this so badly?" ask, "What quality am I encountering that I have not yet embodied?" This question shifts the axis of meaning from outside to inside. It returns authority to the self. Nature illustrates this law quietly. A mirage appears real only from a distance. As you approach, it dissolves. Projection functions the same way. When you move closer to yourself, the illusion loses its power. What once pulled you outward now draws you inward. The energy that was bound to pursuit becomes available for growth. Withdrawing projection is not loss. It is maturation. Jung described this as a critical step in individuation, the process by which the ego differentiates itself from unconscious identifications and aligns with the self. As projections are withdrawn, relationships become less charged, but more real. You are no longer asking others to carry your unlived life. The counterintuitive truth is this: when you stop chasing the image, you recover the substance. What once appeared outside as destiny reappears inside as capacity. You do not lose meaning, you internalize it. And from that place, you can meet the world without illusion, without urgency, and without abandoning yourself. Presence is the state where the nervous system softens and the soul re-enters the body. Jung saw this as the beginning of individuation, when ego and self align. When you are present, you no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer react to silence as threat. The counterintuitive truth is this: stillness is the most magnetic form of power. The inner war begins the moment you abandon the present moment. One part of you moves toward the future, scanning for reassurance, while another part retreats into the past, replaying loss. The body remains here, but the psyche fragments. Jung understood this fragmentation as the ego losing contact with the self. When this happens, life is no longer lived directly. It is interpreted, anticipated, defended against. Presence reunites what fear has split. It is not a technique. It is a state of inner agreement. When you are present, your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations occupy the same moment. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is exaggerated. This wholeness is deeply regulating. The nervous system no longer signals danger where none exists. The breath deepens. The muscles release. Awareness returns to the body. The ego resists presence because presence dissolves its strategies. There is nothing to plan, nothing to manipulate, nothing to secure. Presence removes the future as a bargaining chip. You cannot say, "I will be enough," when you are enough or you are not. Here and now. Jung knew this confrontation was unavoidable. Individuation requires the ego to relinquish its illusions of control and submit to a deeper ordering principle. Notice how much effort is spent avoiding presence. Constant thinking, constant checking, constant movement. These are not habits of productivity, but defenses against stillness. Stillness exposes the truth of your inner state. If anxiety lives beneath the surface, presence will reveal it. If grief has been postponed, presence will invite it forward. This is why stillness is feared. It does not distract. It reveals. A person once believed that staying busy protected her from pain. When she finally stopped, the emotions she had avoided for years rose immediately. At first, she felt as though she were falling apart. In reality, she was coming together. Jung would say that consciousness was expanding to include what had been excluded. The war was not intensifying, it was ending. Presence does not eliminate discomfort, it removes resistance to it. When you are present, emotions move instead of stagnating. Fear passes through instead of embedding itself in behavior. Silence is no longer interpreted as abandonment, but as space. You do not fill every gap with meaning. You allow reality to be what it is before deciding what it means. This is why presence is magnetic. It does not pull. It does not seek. It does not demand. It stabilizes. Others feel this stability unconsciously. A regulated nervous system invites regulation in those nearby. Jung understood that psychic states are contagious. A person who is fully present creates a field in which others feel less compelled to perform, defend, or chase. Presence also restores dignity. When you are present, you stop bargaining for approval. You do not shrink to maintain connection. You do not overextend to prevent loss. You remain with yourself even when uncertainty appears. This loyalty to the moment builds trust between ego and self. The psyche no longer needs to generate symptoms to regain attention. The inner war ends not because you have resolved every conflict, but because you stop fighting yourself. Jung believed that wholeness emerges when opposites are held in consciousness without repression. Presence is the container that allows this holding. You can feel desire without pursuing compulsively. You can feel fear without obeying it. You can feel longing without chasing its object. The counterintuitive truth remains. Stillness is power because it is not reactive. It does not scatter energy. It gathers it. When you are present, life approaches you differently. Not because you have mastered it, but because you are no longer resisting it. Presence is not an escape from suffering. It is the place where suffering loses its authority. And in that place, the inner war, long sustained by avoidance and fear, finally comes to rest. Individuation is not becoming someone new. It is returning to the center you abandoned to survive. The dawn arrives quietly. You notice the chase has ended, not because you gave up, but because you no longer need to run. Jung believed the self is both the center and the totality of the psyche. When you live from that center, life responds differently. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are whole, and wholeness calls everything that truly belongs. The return to the self is rarely dramatic. There is no sudden triumph, no public recognition, no moment where the world applauds your arrival. What changes is subtler and far more decisive. You stop orienting your life around reaction. You stop measuring yourself by response, by outcome, by approval. The urgency that once governed your movements begins to dissolve, not because desire has vanished, but because desire is no longer driven by fear. Jung understood that the self is not an ideal to be achieved, but a reality to be remembered. It is the organizing center that was always present, long before adaptation forced you to fragment. When you were younger, survival demanded compromise. You learned to leave parts of yourself behind to remain connected, to remain safe, to remain acceptable. Individuation is the slow, courageous act of retrieving what was left behind and reintegrating it into consciousness. This return often feels unfamiliar at first. The absence of inner conflict can feel like emptiness. The lack of urgency can feel like loss. You may wonder who you are without the striving, without the longing, without the constant forward pull. Jung would say this disorientation is natural. The ego is learning a new orientation, no longer defined by pursuit, but by presence. As you settle into the center, your relationship with life changes. You no longer interpret every delay as rejection. You no longer treat uncertainty as threat. Silence does not destabilize you. Distance does not provoke panic. You respond where you once reacted. You choose where you once clung. The psyche begins to trust itself again. This trust is not blind optimism. It is grounded knowing. You have faced the shadow. You have withdrawn projections. You have endured stillness without fleeing. The parts of you that once demanded external confirmation have been met internally. Jung believed that when the ego aligns with the self, energy previously bound in symptoms becomes available for living. What once fueled anxiety now fuels clarity. A person who has returned to the self does not become detached from the world. On the contrary, they engage more honestly. They no longer use relationships to fill internal gaps. They meet others as they are, not as saviors or threats. Love becomes an expression rather than a strategy. Work becomes contribution rather than compensation. Solitude becomes nourishment rather than punishment. The return to the self also restores simplicity. You find yourself doing less, but with greater coherence. Decisions arise from a quieter place. You no longer force clarity. You wait until it forms. Jung described this as the ego learning to listen rather than command. When this listening deepens, life begins to unfold with less resistance. The dawn that arrives is not external success, it is internal peace. Not the absence of challenge, but the absence of inner division. You no longer fight yourself to move forward. You no longer abandon yourself to be accepted. The center holds. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means inclusion. Fear may still arise, but it no longer governs. Desire may still appear, but it no longer dictates. You have room for your contradictions. You have space for your humanity. Jung believed this capacity to hold opposites without collapse was the mark of psychological maturity. When you live from the self, you do not need to attract. You do not need to convince. You do not need to pursue. What resonates arrives. What does not falls away without violence. Life responds not to effort, but to alignment. The return to the self is the end of exile. You are no longer living as a fragment searching for completion. You are living as a whole, engaging with life. And from this place, the journey does not end. It stabilizes. The ground beneath you is no longer borrowed. It is your own.